it's Vanessa for Crafty Gemini Creates, and I'm back with another fun and functional project to keep that sewing machine foot pedal in place. We are calling this our non-slip foot pedal pad. Now, depending on the different types of floors that you can be sewing on, I know some of you like to sew barefoot out there, some of you like to sew on carpet or on linoleum, whatever the floor is, you've probably had this happen to you before, where you're kind of feeling for the foot pedal with your foot and it's just inching its way away from you. Well, this is a great little solution to it, and it's also a cute little mini swap gift, or even a gift to give to just any of your crafty friends that have sewing machines. So when I started teaching my son how to sew, I would just throw a piece of this stuff down on the floor so that the foot pedal will stay in place for him. So then I decided, you know what? Why, instead of just throwing this chunk down there, let's pretty it up a little bit and make it like a more legit type of project. So we're going to be working with this really cool product that you can pretty much get at the dollar store. They call it, it's like a non-slip grip liner. People put it in their drawers to keep stuff from sliding around in there. So just pick up one of these in whatever color you want to use. And then you're going to cut out two pieces. So you can see this is doubled up. Now the size that I started off cutting out here fits this foot pedal for the machine that I'm using. And just to give you an idea, I think a lot of foot pedals are probably around this size. I started off with two rectangles that measure 6 inches by 10. If you have a really chunky or bigger foot pedal, then definitely lay it on top and kind of just eyeball the space around it. If you want to start making more of these, go ahead and make yourself a pattern, but it's such a quick project, we don't need to do all that for it right now. So after you have these two, I like to round off the edges. I kind of like the way that it looks. It almost looks like a little slipper. And it's just going to be a cute project to have on the floor in my studio. So we have our two rectangles. We need to round off these edges, okay? And to do this, you can definitely grab a saucer or a plate or something, but I'm just going to fold it in half. I'm going to start with my rotary cutter. Let me show you all this. Start with the rotary cutter off the edge. You see how it's not on the fabric itself? And then I'm just going to bring it in and just cut myself a slight curve. And that way, it should be about the same all the way around. So let me line this up again. And this can totally be trimmed. This is not like a perfectionist project, okay? I'm gonna line this up again. The other end, start off the edge. Don't cut your fingers. And give yourself just a slight curve. All right, and I think that looks good. After you have that, you're going to have to bind this to hold those two layers together. So to do that, let's make some bias tape. We're going to be working with a 1-inch bias tape maker. Now, you can read the manufacturer's instructions of whatever bias tape maker you have, and it's going to tell you the measurement at which to cut your strips for it. So the first thing is, let's talk about bias. So when you have your fabric, here's a square, and I'm starting off with an 18 by 18 inch square, and that works out nicely for this, because we're only going to have to sew up 2 strips, real simple. So I have an 18 inch by 18 inch square. So if you tug on your fabric, and I can tell, I don't have the selvages on here, but I can tell by the amount of stretch that I'm getting when I pull that this is the crosswise grain. So that tells me that my selvage would be here and here. When it has some stretch, it's crosswise. If I tug on the other way, you can see it doesn't have any stretch. That's the lengthwise grain. Now, if I tug on a diagonal, this is a 45-degree angle. This is the bias, and this is where you're going to get the most amount of stretch. So that means we need to cut our strips on the bias. To do that, I'll just fold it on a diagonal. Here's the bias, that 45-degree angle. And then I just will fold it in half again, and then I just turn it so I can have a straight angle on my side here. Let me grab my ruler and my rotary cutter. We have a fold right here, so let's get rid of that first. And then the strips that I need to cut out measure 1 7/8 inches. So let me grab another ruler. All right, so 1 7/8. And if you don't know what the 7/8 measurement is on your ruler, let me give you a quick tip, because sometimes you'll run into these measurements when you're quilting. The measurement between 1 inch and 2 inches, you'll see 8 little hash marks. And that just means 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4, 5, 6, and the one right before the next inch increment where I see 2, so that the little hash mark right before it means 7/8. Because the next inch increment is 8/8, which is 1, and that's how you get your 1-inch increments. So 7/8 is just a little 1/8 hash mark right before the 2-inch mark. So that's what I'm going to line up here, 1 7/8. That little mark right before the 2. And I'm just going to cut one full strip of this. Because it's doubled up, you're going to end up with 2 strips, and that's all you need for this project. You can cut more and use that bias for something else. But for this one, we're just going to need these 2 strips combined. Now to piece these 2 guys together, you're going to line them up like this. We want it to come out so that we have it on the miter and we have one continuous strip of fabric. So here's how you do it. You lay one strip in front of you vertically, pretty side of the fabric facing up, and then the other one is going to go horizontally with the pretty side of the fabric facing down. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see how I've lined it up. From the edge of this fabric, this little tip sticks out about 1/4 of an inch, and then from this edge, the top strip is on top and the one under is sticking out about 1/4 of an inch. And you need to have these little points sticking out 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here, because otherwise they won't line up perfectly, okay? And so that's what you end up with there. Now, to use the bias tape maker in this, we're going to head over to the ironing board and press that seam open. I find that it just works easier that way. And we're going to press this seam open, just so it's flatter and lays smoother for us. All right. I'm going to trim away the little dog ears that are sticking out here. So I have just one continuous strip. Now we're going to grab our 1-inch bias tape maker, again at the ironing board. You're going to lay it with the pretty side facing down. And this little tip on the wider end is where you're going to want to insert that first tip. And if you see that you're having trouble getting the strip to go inside, there's a little opening right here where you can just scrape it with a pin, and you can see that I can pull it through until I get enough of a tip sticking out here. All right, so once I have that, I'm going to grab a smaller pin and kind of just anchor down this tip so it doesn't slide back on me when I go to press it. And this is one thing, actually, I'm looking for the glass head pin right here. So this is a good time to use glass head pins because when you hit it with the iron, you won't melt the little plastic ball on top of it like some of the plastic ones. All right, bias tape is done. Now there's a lot of different ways to attach your bias binding to whatever project you're working on. We're going to do it super simple. Remember, this is not a perfectionist project. This is just a quick functional non-slip pad that we need for our sewing projects, okay? So you're going to layer the 2 layers of your grip liner in place, and then you're just going to start, I just sandwich it into where the little gap opening is of the bias, and you just sandwich it in there. Grab your Wonder Clips for sure. This is a great time to use them. And you can just start clipping them in place and working your way around it. Now, one of the reasons that I use the 1-inch wide bias tape maker is because you have about 1/2 of an inch on each side, so that's going to give you a lot of play room. You don't have to do a straight stitch. I'll show you how I did it in these samples, is using a zigzag stitch. That way you don't have to be super perfect with your stitching or worry about catching the fabric on the backside. If you do a zigzag stitch, you're covering a lot more fabric space, so chances are you're going to catch everything, and I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. So here I have a sample that I started, and I just left a little bit of a tail here, but I just zigzag stitched all the way around. You can see I catch it on both sides, come all the way here, and I'm just going to take it to the sewing machine and show you all how I finished this edge off, okay? All right, so I'm going to finish off this sample for you all, and I'm using a zigzag stitch. Usually the default settings for zigzag stitches are kind of a little bit narrow, so I like to make it wider because we have a chunky bias binding on there, and I want to make sure that I'm catching all the layers. So I'm just going to up my stitch width here. I think a 5.0 on this machine would work fine. Let me start where I stopped. And now, because you have this non-slip stuff on here, it's probably going to get caught on your machine if it has a plastic cover like this. So just lift it a little bit as you work your way around, and then it just kind of eases in there. But stop every little bit, rearrange it, especially when you're going around those curves. And then when you get to the straight sides, it's super easy. It'll go right through. And try not to pull on your bias binding because then you distort it, and when you pull on it, it narrows it up a little bit. It stretches it out. And notice how I'm stitching it. The zigzag is kind of in the center of the bias binding. That way I'm not too far over to the left or off to the right, and I can make sure I'm getting all the layers I need. When I get around to the end, I'm just going to overlap them. There's no need for a fancy binding technique here. I'm just going to overlap it. So I'm trimming off the initial end, like the first part where I started. I'm going to cut it a little bit longer here, just so that there's enough to overlap and a little seam allowance kind of edge here. So if you can see this, I'm folding in this raw edge and then just draping it over so it overlaps. All right, simple as that. Trim off your little threads. And if you don't want it to look kind of wonky, like with the zigzag stitches all around, use a coordinating thread just like I used in this project. So use a thread that matches your fabric. All right, so there is the base of the pad, and you can use it just like this. Now, sometimes if this doesn't work for you just flat like this, you may find that the foot pedal kind of wants to inch forward on you. So I like to put like a little border up here that kind of blocks that from happening, and it doesn't have to be much. You can really put down anything, a few different layers of fabric with some batting or something. But what I like to use is the leftover strips. So remember when we cut the bias binding, we cut out those 2 strips. We use just enough to go around this base here, and then what you have left is going to be just enough for us to do something here with, okay? So we are going to use the most out of that, the 2 strips that we got. So let me cut these a little bit even. I am going to put in a piece here. This is just 3/4 of an inch wide, and this is a Peltex by Pellon. It's a sew-in, kind of heavyweight interfacing. This is the sew-in, but it also comes in fusible. And I'm just going to open up the bias binding here. And place it right in there. You can give it a press if you want to. You can even glue baste it into place. It's not a big deal. We're going to fold this in half. Well, let me give it a little press real quick. Then I'm just going to fold it in half. Okay? Try to get those edges tucked in there. And then you just place it kind of up close to the front. Okay? The ends here, I just tuck them under. It's super easy. And my strip, I forgot to measure the measurement of my strip. It measures about 12.5 or 13 inches long. But you can eyeball it, of course, because if you're making a pad like this that's bigger, then you'll want to switch it up and make it so that it accommodates the width of your pad. So just lay it right on here. You don't even have to really use pins or anything. Just keep those edges folded in. And we're just going to top stitch it, top and bottom, right on the edges. Let me line it up. Get my straight stitch going back on here. And I'm just stitching at the top and bottom on the long edges, just close to the outer edges. All right. So we have our nice little ridge there, and your little foot pedal pad is complete. So I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial and that you'll consider making some maybe for your crafty friends, or if you're teaching a child how to sew, this would be a great little gift to give them so the foot pedal stays in place, and maybe you can give it with some other sewing supplies to get them started. I hope you enjoyed the video tutorial, and if you did, hit it with the thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of my future tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.